You're listening to the Limitless Wealth Method podcast. Smart ideas, real strategies, and candid conversations for business leaders. Here's your host, Jason Hilliard.
What's up, everyone? This is Jason Hilliard, and welcome back to the Limitless Wealth Method podcast. My effort to share the ideas, strategies, and insights that help entrepreneurs, executives, and investors build wealth and live without limits. If you're getting value from this, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe on your favorite platform, watch episodes on YouTube, and share it with just one person who'd get something out of it. My goal is simple: to help you grow your wealth and your life one episode at a time. Let's get into it. This episode is about a specific kind of risk most successful people don't plan for. Not market risk, not investment risk, identity risk. It's what happens when your wealth, your lifestyle, and your reputation are all built on one silent assumption: that you keep performing at a high level without interruption. So if you're successful on paper but still feel uneasy, this episode is for you, because you're probably not worried you'll fail. You're worried you'll have to sell something you didn't want to sell, or take a job you didn't want, or push through a season you don't have the energy for because you don't have time. And the worst part, from the outside, you can still look like you're winning, but inside you feel exposed, not because you're doing something wrong, but because something subtle has changed. And I know the feeling because I had it for years without understanding what it was or how to eliminate it. I talk to a lot of founders, executives, and high earners, people with good incomes, solid portfolios, and what most people would consider having it figured out. And privately, there's a feeling that keeps coming up. It's not fear, it's not panic, it's exposure. It shows up as a quiet thought you don't say out loud. If something changed, I'm not exactly sure what breaks first: markets, career, health, family, time. Everything feels a little too tied together. And here's the uncomfortable truth: most successful people don't feel poor. They feel fragile. And fragility doesn't come from lack of money. It comes from lack of separation. For a long time, earning more felt like security. Saving more felt like control. Owning more assets felt like independence. But today, those things don't always mean what we think they mean. I've seen people with high incomes and seven-figure portfolios get forced into bad decisions, not because they were reckless, but because everything in their life was moving in the same direction at the same time. A market drawdown coincides with career uncertainty. Illiquid investments meet fixed lifestyle costs. Health starts slipping right when focus matters most. The problem isn't risk. Problem is timing. When everything is connected, one shock doesn't create a setback. It creates pressure, and pressure forces decisions. In this episode, I want to talk about why so many successful people feel exposed right now, why high performers often get crushed when things change, and most importantly, what actually fixes that without panic, without prediction, and without trying to outsmart the future. Because real wealth isn't about maximizing returns, it's about preserving choice. So let's talk about that. The reason this feeling is showing up now isn't random, it's structural. For the most part of the last 40 years, the system rewarded one thing above everything else: participation. If you stayed invested, climbed the ladder, bought assets, and didn't do anything extreme, time did the work for you. And volatility was something you just endured along the way up. Liquidity felt abundant, and mistakes were usually recoverable. That environment trained people to believe that growth itself was protection. But the world is changing. Today's success often comes with more complexity, more leverage, financial and personal, and fewer escape hatches. Incomes are higher, but they're also more specialized. Portfolios are larger, but more illiquid. Lifestyles are better, but less flexible. The margin for error has quietly shrunk, and what used to be independent parts of life are now synchronized. Markets affect careers, careers affect health, and health affects decision-making. And when those things move together, resilience disappears. This is why high earners are often more exposed than people with less, not because they're careless, but because success adds layers, more responsibility, more fixed costs, more expectations. And here's the identity piece nobody talks about. The more successful you become, the more your life starts to depend on you staying you, which may seem a little odd, but consistent, sharp, productive, unshakable. The identity is the superpower until it becomes a trap. Because when your lifestyle becomes proof that you're the person who has it handled, you lose that flexibility. Downshifting feels like losing. Rest feels like risk. Saying no feels like weakness. And when everything is optimized for efficiency, there's no slack left in the system. And slack is what turns shocks into just inconveniences instead of crisis. Most people don't realize how little slack they have until they need it. A market decline on its own isn't the problem. A career transition on its own isn't the problem. A health issue on its own isn't the problem. The problem is when those things collide, because when they do, the question stops being what's the best decision and becomes what decision can I make right now? That's the moment exposure turns into damage. When people think about risk, they usually think about outcomes. Will the market go up or down? Will this investment work? Will this career move pay off? But in practice, the most damage doesn't come from bad outcomes. It comes from bad timing. More specifically, it comes from being forced to act at the wrong time. A forced decision is any decision you make without the ability to wait. And waiting is more powerful than most people realize. Waiting lets information arrive. Waiting lets emotions cool. Waiting lets options expand. When you don't have the ability to wait, even good options become bad ones. High earners assume that because their income is high and their balance sheet looks strong, they'll have flexibility when they need it. But flexibility isn't about how much you have. It's about how quickly you can access it without consequences. If your capital is illiquid, your costs are fixed, and your identity is tied to one outcome, you don't have optionality. You have exposure. That's when markets don't just fluctuate. They dictate behavior. I've watched people sell assets they liked because they needed cash, take jobs they didn't want because timing was wrong, ignore health issues because stopping felt too risky. None of those are bad people or bad planners. They were simply over-optimized for a world that assumed continuity. And continuity is the silent assumption in most financial plans. That tomorrow will look roughly like today, that change will be gradual, that you'll have time to adjust. But change rarely arrives that politely. It arrives as an overlap. A few things go wrong at once, and suddenly the question is, what's the smart move? It's what move keeps everything from breaking? That's not strategy, that's survival. And this is where most people think they need a better forecast. They don't. They need better structure. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. I've seen this hit founders hard. A founder I know had a big year. Revenue was up, valuation was up. Everyone was telling him he's crushing it. And he started living like the growth was permanent, not reckless, just optimized. Then the overlap hit. A client concentration issue showed up, and the funding environment shifted. And at the same time, his sleep went to hell. He had anxiety, brain fog, and he had a short fuse. And here's the part nobody tells you. When your health drops, your time horizon collapses. You stop thinking in quarters and years, and you start thinking in days. So he started making short-term decisions to protect the image, keeping expenses, keeping headcount, keeping the story alive, not because it was the smart move, but because it felt unsafe to slow down. That's exposure. It's when your business isn't just your business anymore. It's your identity, your lifestyle, your reputation, and your nervous system all tied together. And one shock doesn't create a problem. It creates pressure. And pressure creates forced decisions. And I'll make this personal for a second. There was a season where everything looked great on paper for us. Income was strong, investments growing, life was moving along, but I remember having this quiet thought in my head. If two things hit at once, what do we do first? Not because we were broke, because we were too connected. Too many things depended on continuity. And that's when I realized the goal isn't to be right about the future. The goal is to build a structure where we don't have to make decisions under threat. So let's talk about what actually fixes it. If exposure isn't about intelligence and it's not about predicting the future, what actual fixes the problem? In my experience, it comes down to one thing: separation. Separating what must not fail from what is allowed to take risk. Most people blend those two together: income, investments, lifestyle, health, identity, all tied to the same assumption, continuing to work. Fixing exposure means untying those knots on purpose. So the first fix is liquidity, but not the kind people usually think they have. Liquidity isn't what you own. It's what you can access without penalty, without limit, without timing risk, and without explanation. A lot of successful people believe they're liquid because they have assets. They're not. If accessing capital requires markets to cooperate, or a deal to close, or selling something you actually want to keep, it's not liquidity, it's conditional. For our family, that meant creating a separate joint investment account with a very simple job. It's a straightforward 4 ETF portfolio. No leverage, no lockups, no emotional attachment. If we needed to, we could liquidate it and have cash in roughly 36 hours. That account isn't designed to maximize returns. It's designed to prevent forced decisions. The question to ask yourself is simple but uncomfortable. If I needed 6 months of breathing room, where would it actually come from in practice? The second fix is income separation. Many high earners have income, but very little income diversification. If your income depends on one employer, one industry, and one regulatory environment, or one economic cycle, it's more fragile than it appears. That doesn't mean you need 10 income streams. It means you need income that doesn't all disappear for the same reason. In our case, my wife and I own separate businesses in different sectors of the economy. That wasn't accidental. It was intentional diversification. If one sector slows, the household doesn't immediately feel it. If one income stream is disrupted, the other provides stability. The goal isn't complexity, the goal is independence. The third fix is one most people overlook. Exposure isn't created by ambition, it's created by rigidity. We stopped asking, can we afford this? And started asking, can we afford this in bad times? That one question changed everything. There were personal and business expenses that seemed reasonable when things were going well, but all they really did was add pressure to our monthly life. Pressure to earn, pressure to perform, pressure to say yes when we wanted to say no. Eliminating those expenses didn't shrink our lifestyle, it expanded our ability to wait. And waiting is leverage. When your fixed commitments are low enough, volatility stops forcing your hand. Now let's talk about the one people nod at and then ignore: health. I'm going to say this as clearly as I can. Health isn't a category of your life. It's the platform your entire life runs on. And if the platform starts failing, everything else becomes meaningless because you can't enjoy it, you can't protect it, and you can't think clearly enough to keep it. This is why I call health infrastructure, because when your health slips, 3 things happen, and they happen fast. First, your energy drops, which means your capacity drops. You can't handle stress the same way. You can't lead the same way. Everything costs more. Second, your time horizon collapses. When you're not sleeping, when you're inflamed, when your nervous system is shot, you stop making long-term decisions and you start making make it through the day decisions. And third, and this is the one nobody wants to admit, your judgment gets worse. Not because you're not smart, because your brain is under load and under pressure, and bad judgment is expensive. That's when people stay in roles too long, take deals they shouldn't take, sell at the wrong time, Stop being patient. Start needing certainty. Start needing control. And that's how wealth gets damaged. Not by one big mistake, but by a series of small decisions made with a depleted mind. So for our family, health is non-negotiable. It's scheduled, it's protected, and nothing replaces it. My kids exercise, my wife exercises, I exercise, even the dogs exercise. If we travel, we exercise. If we have an early meeting, we exercise. If it's a crazy day, we exercise. If I don't feel good, I still exercise. There are no exceptions because health is the one variable we can count on to keep us clear, patient, and resilient. Health isn't about aesthetics. It's about preserving clarity, patience, and resilience. If you have money, but you don't have health, you don't have freedom. You have a nice looking cage. If there's one thing I hope you take from this episode, it's this. Feeling exposed doesn't mean you failed. It means you've reached a level of success where the stakes are real. Exposure isn't a personal flaw. It's a structural one. And the good news is structure can be changed. You don't fix exposure by predicting the next recession, the next rate move, or the next headline. You fix it by building a life that doesn't force your hand when things change. That starts with separating survival from upside, with making sure the things that must work will work, and allowing everything else to take risk on your terms. Real wealth isn't about how aggressive you are when times are good. It's about how calm you are when they're not. So here's a simple question to sit with after this episode. If something changed tomorrow, what decision would I be forced to make first? If you don't like the answer, that's not a reason to panic. It's a place to start because the goal isn't perfection. It's optionality. It's having the ability to wait, to think clearly, and to choose, not react. That's what keeps you in control. And that's how wealth stops feeling fragile and starts feeling durable. If you got value from this, share it with someone who looks successful on paper, but you know they're carrying more pressure than they admit. And if you want more episodes like this about money, markets, leadership, AI, and building wealth without limits, make sure you're subscribed. And to everyone listening, Happy New Year to you and your family. I appreciate you listening, and I'll talk to you soon.